Today's video is going to center on making some custom bracketing for our MT09 windshield. We want to move the position of it and change it just slightly. It's a small change, but to do that, I need to make new brackets right up from scratch. And I thought a lot of people that are working on a custom motorcycle, probably this is one of the areas that's really difficult for people to figure out, is when you have multiple angles and multiple places where things have to go and how solid it has to be and or rubber mounted. And not many things are more delicate than mounting a windshield so it's solid, so it absorbs vibration and it doesn't crack. And these brackets I think will work great. Now today's video is going to be about making a replacement bracket for our MT09 windshield, one that lowers the windshield down, lets it angle back for a little bit better aerodynamics, maybe a little bit less wind noise. We don't know until we try it. Now making a bracket up, and I've made hundreds of brackets for these motorcycles during restorations and mainly with the camera mounts, but there's one thing that I want to emphasize on this. This is something, it's got to be perfect. If that windshield is crooked, I'm going to be real unhappy. So I'm going to try to show how I would make it, and if it works out, we'll get a chance to ride, even though this time of the year we're not riding every day. But it would, if you make those brackets, I would never cut up the original brackets. I want to be able to go back in case I don't like this. Another thing I wanted to do is probably sometime over the winter, if I have any blue paint left over for this job, I'm going to order another one of these windshields. They're only $27 including the brackets from Amazon, and I want to paint it and make it so I have, when I want to evil twin this bike out, I have another front fender I might make blue. I'll have a lot of choices when it comes to evil twinning the bike out. It's something I like to do. But for today, I want to make up those brackets, and I'll share whatever I can and try not to leave out any steps of how I would go about making those brackets. Now on a previous video, I showed how I installed the brackets. I had made these previously, these little carbon fiber parts. And once, see, this is what I'm trying to eliminate, this gap here. I don't like this gap. So I want to lower this. I want to make a bracket. I'm going to make 4 separate brackets, and that'll give me full adjustability. I can then raise the front, lower the back, both, raise the whole thing up and down. I'll have a lot more choices. These brackets, you're pretty much married to that one angle, and that angle is fine. But in my eyes, that should be laid down just a little bit. Of course, it's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. And I have 2 windshields for this bike. What's really nice about that, I have a long one and a short one, and I can vary it from summer to winter whenever I want. And I'm thinking it may be that when I'm done with this, I'll have the blue windshield and the smoked one, and I'll have the same amount of choices. We'll see. This is going to play out to be an interesting day. So the first thing is to get it up on the stand, because I want the bike to be straight up and down while I'm working on it. I don't want to tip it over, because I'm going to be taking a lot of little views and a lot of little measurements. But see, I really think when they designed it, they should have made it just lay down just a little bit more. But again, personal choice. A whole motorcycle is personal choice, what you like. And I think it would look better laid down just a little bit. So that'll be today's project. Now the bike is straight up and down, so that'll allow me to see if I'm getting it straight when I make the brackets, if I've got it crooked, if I have to shim anything or tweak anything. And I can look at it from far away and from close. I really think when they designed this windshield, and there's several variations of this out on Amazon anyway, the 2 things is they should have made this lip just a little bit shorter, maybe by 1/8 of an inch, and made that bracket that goes up and down just a little bit further down. But again, that's just me, and I'm very fussy about detailed things like this. So the first step on this whole thing, take the whole thing off the bike. Matter about 5-10 minutes. The first thing I have to do is pull these little rubber covers off. Now I was real careful when I put them on. I put a drop of 5-minute epoxy on them, and I'll have to clean that off the bolt, because I didn't want it didn't seem like they were a real tight fit. And of course, I don't want to scar the windshield either when I take them off. And keep in mind the way that this is made very nicely, that the whole windshield is mounted in rubber with the little rubber biscuits. So it doesn't put any stress on the windshield. That's a real nice thing, but we want to keep that part of the design when I make the brackets. And that little drop of epoxy I think is a good thing, because I don't think if you lose those little cups, I don't know where else you could get them. Probably have to search around at hardware stores to get them. But the bolts are nice. I'll clean off that epoxy before I put this all back together. And this is the easy part to get off. 4 bolts on that takes that off, and we're ready to go then to a nice warm heated shop to work. And there's our windshield right off, and I try to save the parts in the side they came off. Not real important, but it's just a habit of mine to do that, to lay out the bolts and stuff. So I put, in other words, if I was doing changing a tire, I want to have the left bolts. Not real important, but it's just a habit I have. That's an old school way of doing things, and when you take something apart, line the parts up in a row, and then when you put them back, start at the other end of the row and go backwards. And this is what the bolts hold this on. The rubber biscuits are in here. So what we're going to do is use this and make patterns so that this piece, now of course, a lot of people might be tempted to just cut this and bend it or whatever. And to be honest, I was thinking of that too, but in the overall scheme of things, it's easier for me just to make the brackets. I think I have some good material from when I was in the manufacturing business making model airplane parts. I have some aluminum landing gear material that's 7075 T6 aluminum, which will make some really nice brackets there. So the next thing is get these 2 off, and we can get into a nice warm shop and have a nice warm cup of coffee. Now every step of this is pretty cut and dry, but you think, every time I think that, and when I was making several of the camera mount brackets, I would think, in my mind, I would say, that'll just like that when it's done. And when I went to make the bends and try to make it accurate and get it so it didn't vibrate, it was a little trickier than I originally thought. So this might be one of those jobs that turns out to be just a little bit trickier than you think it is, but we're going to give it a shot. So we got all the parts off. This is what they look like when they're disassembled. You only need 2 Allen wrenches for the whole job. Relatively straightforward and easy, but the one thing I would never want to do is cut this bracket, because I might want to put it back. And see, I'm always evil twinning the bikes out, making changes that I want to be able to put back. I never want to make a change that I can't put back. So by doing this and making 2 extra brackets here, I have all these angles, I have the dimensions, and I know the back dimension I want to make pretty much the thickness of my thumb, lay it back. But I have a nice little way I'm going to try to do this by making a front bracket first and then take that measurement up against the motorcycle and try to cover that gap. And as that lays back, it covers that empty gap, which a lot of people think is an unattractive part of an MT09, and it probably is. We're going to try to make it better. Now, the first time I put this on the motorcycle with the hardware that they supply, within minutes I was thinking, how can I get that windshield to lay back just a little more? And I've been thinking about it for a long time to get it. And this has actually had a bike come stock. If you just leave it stock, and there are obviously 4 bolts in there, but this is the one area of the bike that I really wanted to get right. I really want, over the winter time, get that windshield right, make a spare windshield that's blue. This is the part of the bike that, of all the things on the bike, I'd like to make custom to me. Now on the 650 restoration, I wanted that carbon fiber part in there, so when you look through the windshield, and I wanted to use the clear windshield. I have a smoke windshield. I wanted the clear one so I could look down in there and see the carbon fiber. And as small of a detail as that is, every time I take the bike somewhere, people notice it. Hey, my bike has flat black plastic. Well, that's just a thing. It's all little details that make the bike your own. And no matter what bike you ride or how you ride it, I don't know many people that don't want to have some custom things that makes the bike personal to them. And this windshield thing is a big thing to me. Another detail thing, when we do our paint testing, we're going to paint these parts, just these 2 parts, as part of our paint test, because we have a new paint that'll be coming up soon. And I want to see, number one, it's going to match the blue, but it's a new type of paint that I've never used, a very high-end paint with some high-end thinners. I got to make sure it's not going to melt the plastic and whatnot. But I'll do that on a separate video. This might be in the next week or so. We'll get that project underway. But the windshield is one of the things that I really wanted to make a top priority for this winter's building. So the first step on this is, the first part of this, I need to make a pattern. Pretty much I want to just envision what this shape is going to look like. And since we're going to do it in two pieces, I want to fold. I need to get relatively accurate. Again, this is just the lines that this is going to work on. So what I would have to do, and of course a million ways to do this, this is going to be the one side. As this folds over, I need to know the angle. This is the front part. So what I need to do is trace this out. And then roll this over. I know where that, since this side is going to stay pretty much the same. All right, so I need a bigger piece of paper is what I need. Okay, but that's roughly how I'm going to do it. I'll get a bigger piece of paper here and start the same thing over. So I want to make that, it's just going to be a piece, but there's two angles, two divergent angles. I have to pick up the angles and then drill the holes. Now, I may have to make several of these before I'm done, but I think you get the idea. I want to pick up the center of that hole and pick up the center of this, and I see I've got to make it a little bit bigger. So this is why you have plenty of Cheerios boxes. We'll just make this until we're happy with, we have the center of that hole, the center of that hole, this angle, and then we can basically connect the dots, and then hopefully be able to bend the material to get these angles in pretty accurately. Now, needless to say, this starts to consume time because you have to make this pattern a few times. But I finally got it, and I got it on center here. Let's see if I can show this up close instead of from far away. I got it to where, try to do this with one hand, where I've got the holes lined up, and all I need is the center of both holes, and then I need these angles, and these angles are critical because if they're not right, the windshield's not going to line up right. So this is more critical to get that pattern, and I had to make several of them, of course, but I'll get one that I'm happy with before I go over and see what kind of scrap I have. I know I have a bin full of scrap. Getting these angles right, and this is a good example of something when you go to put, and I told Dallas this, an 86 exhaust system on an 82 GS, you have to make a bracket that pretty much looks like this, and every one of those angles has to be just right. And if it's off, it's a problem. So this is a thing of you just got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it until you get two of these that match, and they replicate this. Now, if we were willing to sacrifice this part, we could just cut it and bend that over or something. But then what that does, then we can't go back on Evil Twin Day and just put it back the way it was. It's just me. I always save the scrap from all these projects I work on, and I've got a bucket of stuff from making camera mounts. I think some of that'll work. So in the scrap bucket, and I do have, this is what I was looking for. I do have some of these. These I designed and manufactured their model airplane landing gear. And so what's going to happen with these? These are the really best quality aluminum I have. If that part fits on this, I'm pretty much home free all. And what I said before is totally true. Something that looks real easy a lot of times is a lot of work. It's more work than you think anyway. So I'm just thinking, if this part, the bend is in the wrong direction. Not going to be able to do that. I thought that would work. That won't work. Well, maybe it will. I guess we're going to have to see. But this is really good quality aluminum. So if we could possibly use it, this will be great. And if we can't, we're going to go to plan B. But this is the kind of thing you envision a bracket, even a camera mounts that I made, and it looks so easy when it's done. You say, gee, that part, you know how many angles there are, how many cuts, and how many, you notice they have these holes elongated because they knew you're going to have to do that with the part before you tighten the bolts. Well, this is a pretty well engineered part. It's almost worth getting another windshield just to have two spare brackets for 26 bucks, 27 bucks, whatever it was. But anyway, and that's of course a future project. Now, the reason I put this on, I want to, two things, try not to chew up the aluminum when it's in the vise. This won't really help that much. But the first thing I need to do, I need to plot out the angles. Once I get the angles right and get this bent, then drilling the holes and grinding it and everything will be relatively easy. What's going to be difficult is getting the two bends exactly right. And once I have that part that it'll fit in here, and this is more complicated than it looks. In fact, the first time somebody goes to try this, they're going to say, wow, that's more difficult than to get that part and get that pattern, more difficult than you think it is. So we know roughly this is the angles that we need, and we're going to see if we can bend these angles accurately. And after I bend it at this part, then I can slide this in and plot where the holes go. You can't drill the holes first and then bend this. You have to get the bends right, because this may alter where the holes actually go. So just 101 of pattern making is to get the angles. That's going to be critical. I may have to make 2 or 3 pieces. Well, I had to make 2 or 3 patterns. It doesn't matter at all. Cardboard is cheap, and I do have 4 or 5 of these extra model airplane landing gear to use. Now, if you went to Lowe's or Home Depot and bought aluminum, it would not be 7075 T6. It would be some other grade of aluminum, but it wouldn't be that. So I'm going to try to use that first. That's my first choice. Now, I don't have a really good vise, and I don't care about scarness. It's going to get all sanded and painted with flat black paint anyway. But this is the good. It looks like that bent. Now, a lot of times when you bend aluminum to a nice tight radius, it cracks. Let's hope this doesn't crack. Now I've got to reposition it for the second bend and then go over to the part and see if that worked out. Now, it looks like I have that angle pretty good. Now, it'll be a miracle if we can get both of these angles right. It's not as easy as it looks to get this right. Okay. We're working off of that line. And we may have to tweak these bends, I don't know. Okay, so we have the 2 angles, and we can just go over now and see how close we are. So if you look at this close, you see this is way more than a 90-degree bend. We can't really do that conveniently. We're going to have to take this part, move it up out of the vise, and hope we can bend that last little bit to match that angle. And that's a significant part of it that we're going to have to do. Now, this grade of aluminum is really good at making nice sharp bends like that, and if you do that with ordinary aluminum from Lowe's, it'll crack. Let me show if I can. I've got the angle and the angle here and the angle there. So now with those pieces inside of each other, that'll hold that in place, and I can spot the hole and the hole. And that's the critical thing, is to get that bend before you do anything. That bend's got to be right. And then we'll spot these holes, and then we have to reverse this whole thing to make the bracket for the other side. Now, you think that would be easier than it was. Well, nothing's ever easy. But with this piece in place, and I've got to remember not to make 2 left sides like you make fuselage sides in modeling. But this is the key thing now, is to get this hole spotted. And that's why I have the blue tape on there. I'll get that spotted. Move this up without moving that hole. Spot this. And the rest of it is going to be just trimming and cleaning up the part. But now we have the part and the 2 holes and the angles. And that's the hard part of this whole thing. The rest of this, hopefully, will be a little bit easier. And then, of course, making the reverse mirror image of this, we'll do the whole same thing in reverse. Now, I just want to spot the holes right now. I just want to get the centers and then go over to the part and see if I'm close. A step drill is always best for doing this. And this is not like drilling a crankshaft on an engine or something, but it's got to be relatively close. Now we'll check that those two line up before we drill the holes. But a step drill is always best for drilling this kind of stuff. Now the whole thing with any job like this, it can be really intimidating because you can't figure out the next step, and that's the good news about having a YouTube video to at least, look how close we got that. Amazing. Okay, so I don't care about the overage on this now. I want to go back to the drill press and drill those two holes. I know I've got, that looks like it's going to be a successful bracket. Now I'm not sure if you can see, but that is pretty nice line up there. Now it's just a question of trimming off all this extra material. And the next step is to just hacksaw off as much of this as we can, grind the rest off. And I used a washer to get that shape, and I'm going to leave a little extra material here. I went out and measured. This washer is bigger than the footprint of where it goes, so that'll give me a little room if I have to open up that hole. I don't think I will, but just in case. And I checked that this diameter is exactly the diameter of the original part so that the rubber bushings can slide in there and do their mushrooming effect. Believe it or not, this is a tricky part to make. Boy, I'm impressed at how long it's taken me to do this. I'll be lucky if I get the other side done, but I'd rather have it done right and take my time. What I want to do is leave on just enough material that I can do the final little shaping on the grindstone. Now after shaping, I wanted to make sure I don't have any razor edges on this. Countersink the holes just slightly and get all the sharp edges over because I'm going to be working with this out by the motorcycle. I don't want to wind up with bloody fingertips. So basically after grinding this, getting off all the sharp edges, checking that I have a good fit for the rubber, this is the first part. Now, one of the things, if you're a modeler, you know this, and a lot of my subscribers are former or current modelers, you know it is always a problem when you're making fuselage sides. You make two lefts or two rights. So to bypass that, I'm going to take this part and leave it there and take this part over to the workbench so I don't make two the same. And ask me how I know to do that. So I already have a rough pattern. Should save me a little bit of time. I already know the material, and boy, the way that material bends and doesn't crack, that's high quality aluminum. I've got all my spare stuff here, and I basically will do this one off camera so that it usually goes a little bit quicker, but I know I've got to basically just reverse the bends, maybe make another pattern, I don't know. But I want to wind up, I don't want to confuse the fact and have both to go to the left or to the right. And if you never have been a modeler, you don't know how easy that is to do. It really is easy. And I'm laughing about it, but it can ruin your whole day. All right, I'm going to do this next one off camera and see how much time we have left in the day. So as always happens in our shop, the day ends too quickly, but we do have our two front brackets made, and we're not going to have time to go do the fitting on this, so we're going to pick that up on part 2. Anyway, it's a messy job. It's not that expensive. And I hope the tips on this video will be of some use to everybody. So these two little pieces, these are the front two mounts. We'll pick this up on part 2. We just run out of time here in the shop. We're in the middle of the holiday season. People coming over, my grandson over here. This will allow us to get started and do the final set back of the windshield. I'll try to detail that out. I try on my videos carefully, and I know that sometimes they're a little crude and a little long, but I try not to leave out any steps because there really are people that want to know how to make these brackets or camera mount brackets or they just want to know. Now a lot of times I watch YouTube, I just want to know, even though I can't afford a polo pony, but I like to know what to feed them. Good analogy. Anyway, I think these are going to work fine, and to be honest, I knew this was going to take longer than I thought it would, but I'm not painting myself into a corner where if I don't like this or something else happens, it won't matter. I can put it back just the way it was. And if you're doing a cafe racer or some custom bike, you don't want to cut something off and then a couple of years later you want to put that seat back on or that tank and it's missing. So this buys us a lot of options for our future Evil Twin project. So I hope you'll stay tuned and watch part 2 on the next day or so, as soon as I can get to it. And then hopefully we'll have it, that we have pictures of it all mounted before and after. I did take some before pictures, and see if that little, and most people obviously are not even going to notice it. It won't matter. I'll notice. So if you're new to my channel, these are the kind of projects I usually work on over the winter, and I try to ride all summer. Basically, I try to ride as many days as I can, and on the days I can't ride, I try to do projects to upgrade the bikes, Evil Twin them out, make some modifications, try to show anything we've learned or things we can share that'd be productive. I really have to thank all the people that contribute to YouTube. I've enjoyed every one of them. I have learned so much, and I'm more than happy to pass on whatever information I have. And making brackets, I've done it for many, many years. And because I have a background in machine shop work and designing aircraft parts, it's relatively easy for me, but it isn't really, it's not as easy as it looks on a video, trust me. And to get that aluminum to bend nice like that, it better be 70-75. Anyway, enough of that. We've got a beautiful winter coming ahead of us. We got a lot of MT09 projects, and I hope you'll be joining us basically for all of them. So if you enjoyed the video, I hope you share it with your friends. And of course, I hope, most of all, that we'll see you tomorrow. And thanks again for watching.